David Gant was an ordinary working man with very little money of his own. But every day, he handled millions of dollars as part of his job. He worked as a supervisor for Loomis Fargo, a security company responsible for transporting cash between banks. David spent 16 hours a day guarding money he could never spend himself. His pay was only $8 an hour, which was nowhere near enough to support his family. Over time, the long hours and financial struggles wore him down. He began to feel trapped, tired, and desperate for a better life. Eventually, his frustration turned into a dangerous idea: stealing the very money he was trusted to protect. At Loomis Fargo, David became close to a coworker named Kelly Campbell. Even after she left the company, they continued to meet. One day, Kelly introduced David to her friend Steve Chambers, a small-time criminal always looking for fast money. When Steve learned David had access to Loomis Fargo's vaults, he came up with a plan to rob the company. At first, David was nervous. He had never broken the law before. But between Kelly's encouragement and Steve's promises of a wealthy future, David gave in. Together, they began planning what would become one of the biggest bank robberies in American history. Their plan was simple but poorly thought out. On the night of October 4th, 1997, David would stay late after work, turn off the security cameras, take the recording tapes, load the company van with cash, and escape. The idea was that David would flee to Mexico with a small amount of money, about $50,000, while Steve kept the rest until things settled down. Later, they would split it equally. But this plan had a serious flaw. David was trusting Steve to hold on to millions of dollars, with no guarantee he would share it later. Blinded by desperation, David ignored the risk. That night, David followed through. He shut off 2 cameras, but forgot about a third hidden one that captured everything, including David dancing in celebration as he loaded the van. For more than 2 hours, he stuffed the van with over $17.3 million in cash, most of it in $20 bills. Without realizing it, David had just committed the second-largest cash robbery in U.S. history. The next morning, when employees arrived at the Loomis Fargo vault, they found the locks broken and the vault nearly empty. Security footage quickly confirmed David was the suspect. Soon after, police discovered the abandoned Loomis Fargo van with $3 million left inside, along with the stolen camera tapes. David had already crossed into Mexico, enjoying luxury resorts with the small cut he took with him. Meanwhile, Steve and his wife Michelle went on wild spending sprees, buying a mansion, luxury cars, and expensive items. The FBI launched a massive investigation. They offered a $500,000 reward for information, and soon received a tip from one of Steve's neighbors who noticed his sudden wealth. The FBI put Steve and Michelle under surveillance, and their suspicious bank deposits, mostly in $20 bills, confirmed their involvement. Wiretaps then revealed something even more shocking. Steve and his friends were plotting to have David killed in Mexico so they could keep all the money. But the FBI arrested Steve's hitman before the plan could happen. By early 1998, the FBI had enough evidence. On March 1, 1998, David was arrested in Mexico. The next day, Steve, Michelle, and Kelly were arrested in North Carolina. In total, about 88% of the stolen cash was recovered. David Gant was sentenced to 7 years in prison, while Steve Chambers received 11 years. Years later, Hollywood turned this bizarre story into the comedy film Masterminds, 2016. David even worked as a consultant for the movie, but he wasn't paid, since the law required any money he earned to go toward repaying the stolen funds. Today, David Gant lives in Jacksonville, Florida, with his wife and children. He works as a construction worker and often shares his story as a warning about the consequences of bad decisions.